Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. I'm Angela Brady. I'm the acting director of the Seattle Department of Transportation. Welcome, everyone. We're here today to talk about the Seattle Transit Measure. Thank you all for coming as the city of Seattle works together toward renewing our Seattle Transit Measure by working with City Council. And I want to start by introducing Mayor Katy Wilson to share her vision for this measure and for growing transit. Welcome, Mayor.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Acting Director Brady. Very excited to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. Today is an exciting day for Seattle because we are taking an important step toward renewing and expanding one of the most effective tools we have to improve our transit service, make our city more affordable, and build the kind of world-class transit system that Seattle deserves. Today, I am transmitting legislation to the Seattle City Council to renew the Seattle Transit Measure and put it before Seattle voters this November. I want to thank Council President Hollingsworth, Transportation Committee Chair Saka, and all the members of the City Council. I look forward to working closely with them in the coming weeks as they review this proposal, ask questions, and help shape our path forward. I also want to thank our partners at King County Metro, the Seattle Department of Transportation, the City Budget Office, and all of the staff in my office who have worked through the details to build a proposal that is ambitious, responsible, and focused on the people who need transit the most. And I want to especially recognize the riders, the advocates, the community organizations, labor partners, and neighborhood leaders who have fought for years to make transit better, more reliable, more affordable, and more accessible in Seattle. I want to thank the Seattle Transit Advisory Board, the Transit Equity Work Group, ATU 587, which represents our hardworking operators and mechanics, Transportation Choices Coalition, the Transit Riders Union, and dozens of other stakeholders who we have worked closely with in crafting this measure. This measure exists because people organized, spoke up, showed up, and kept insisting that transit is essential to a fair and affordable city. That is personal for me. As you probably know, before I was mayor, I helped to found the Transit Riders Union because riders needed a stronger voice in the decisions that shape our daily lives. We fought for better service, lower fares, and a transit system that works not only for traditional commuters, but for the workers, students, seniors, parents, and neighbors whose lives depend on transit every day. That is the history behind today's proposal, and it's why this moment matters. For many people in this city, transit is not a backup plan. It is how they get to work, how they get to school, to childcare, to medical appointments, to the grocery store, and back home again. It is the nurse heading to Harborview for an early shift, the server getting home from the junction after last call, the student taking the bus to Ballard High School, the parent on Beacon Hill headed to daycare and work with child in tow, the senior in the Chinatown International District getting to an appointment independently, and the airport worker in Rainier Beach connecting to the light rail. These are the trips that make our city work. And when transit is frequent, reliable, and affordable, it does more than move people from one place to another. It gives people freedom. It gives families choices. It helps workers reach opportunity. And it helps students to build their future. It helps seniors stay independent. And it helps more people stay in the city they love. That is why better transit is also an affordability strategy. Transportation is one of the biggest costs in a household budget, and most of that cost comes from owning a car. Gas, insurance, repairs, parking, monthly payments, and maintenance all add up fast. So when we make our transit system better, we make it possible for more households to live car-free or car-light, and that could put hundreds or thousands of dollars back into a family's budget. That is real affordability. And we also need to be honest. A sales tax is a far from perfect tool. It is not the funding system that I would design from scratch. But under state law, cities are limited in how we fund our transportation benefit districts. And if we do not use the tools available to us now, the result is less transit service and fewer free passes. That would hurt the people who rely on transit the most. So this proposal uses the tools we have and directs the benefits where they matter most. More service for everyone, more access, and more support for the people who depend on public transit. This is how we build the transit-rich city that Seattle has been working towards for generations. A city where buses are frequent enough that people can count on them. A city where light rail, buses, streetcars, walking, biking, and rolling work together as one connected system. A city where transit connects people to opportunity, strengthens our neighborhoods, supports our economy, and makes daily life a little easier. And most of all, a city where owning a car is a choice, not a requirement. That is what a world-class transit looks like, and that is what Seattle deserves. Today is a milestone, and it's also a beginning. I am excited to send this proposal to the City Council today, and I look forward to working with Council President Hollingsworth, Chair Saka, and the full council to move it forward. And ultimately, I look forward to giving Seattle voters the opportunity this November to decide whether we continue building the transit system our city needs for the next decade. Thank you.
I'm back. I want to thank Mayor Wilson for her leadership and our partners at King County Metro for their continued collaboration on the Seattle Transit Measure. I also want to recognize SDOT staff, City Budget Office, and the Mayor's Office staff who worked together to develop this proposal. I'd like to thank a few members of my team. They're standing right over here. Thank you so much, Jen Malley Crawford, Anna Trevino, Candida, Lorenzana, Megan Hoyt, Matt Yarrow, Carolyn Birkenfeld, Kyle Butler, and Lilia Shiktu. Okay, let's try it again. So thank you so much, you guys, for all of your hard work on this. A measure like this takes careful professional work. It requires strong data, sound financial planning, close coordination with our partners, and a clear understanding of how people actually move around Seattle every day. At SDOT, our role is to help turn these investments into real service, real access, and real improvements for the people who rely on transit. At SDOT, that means administering these funds responsibly. It means working with Metro on transit service priorities. It means making sure that free ORCA passes reach the people they are intended to serve. It means investing in practical street improvements that help buses move more safely and reliably. And it means tracking results so that we can continue to improve over time. Today's proposal is for a 0.3% sales tax over 10 years. This will raise $138 million per year on average over the life of the measure. The Seattle Transit Measure has been one of the city's most important tools for strengthening transit. It helps us buy additional Metro service, like extra trips coming to the Route 8 later this year to make bus service more frequent 7 days a week. It also supports Seattle streetcar operations, provides free ORCA passes to people who need them, and make targeted improvements at the places where buses get delayed. This renewal proposal builds on that foundation. It would fund 280,000 Metro bus trips each and every year. That's 100,000 more trips than today. That means more service at the times when people need it, not just during the traditional commute hours. It means better midday, evening, overnight, and weekend service. That matters because Seattle is not a 9-to-5 city. People are traveling to jobs, schools, medical appointments, childcare, grocery stores, community events, and family responsibilities during all times of the day. A strong transit system has to work for all of those trips. This proposal more than doubles the number of free transit passes that we give out. It will fund 22,000 free ORCA cards for people who participate in Seattle Housing Authority's rental assistance programs, low-income Seattle preschool families, and the Seattle Promise Scholars. This is a practical affordability investment. When people have reliable transit and a pass in their pocket, they have more freedom transportation vision. We are building a city where car ownership is a choice, not a requirement. That means better bus service, better connections to light rail, better access to job opportunities. And for SDOT, this is also about good stewardship. Seattle voters have consistently supported the Seattle Transit Measure over the years because they have seen the city use these funds carefully and effectively. We are focused on making investments where they can make the biggest difference, especially in neighborhoods where people rely on transit the most and in places where Seattle is planning for an increase in homes and jobs. I want to also recognize that transit service is only as strong as the streets it runs on. That is why SDOT's work on transit priority, bus stop improvements, signal upgrades, and targeted capital projects are so important. These are practical behind-the-scenes improvements, but for riders, they can mean a bus that comes more often, a connection that is safer, a trip that feels more reliable, or a commute that no longer requires a car. This is all what's so exciting about the mayor's proposal today. Yes, it's ambitious, but it is also very grounded. It is about more trips, better service, broader access, and the day-to-day details that make transit work. I'm proud of the SDOT team and our Metro partners for the professionalism and the care that went into this proposal. You all have been working on this for a long time. And I'm Seattle. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce our next speakers. City depends on community members and volunteers to serve on our numerous advisory boards, and I'm really happy to introduce Ashwin and Zach. Why don't you come on up? Thank you.
Thank you, Director Brady. Hi, everybody. I'm Ashwin Bhumbla. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Transit Advisory Board.
Hi, everybody. My name is Zach. I'm also one of the co-chairs on the Transit Advisory Board. And TAB for short, that's kind of what I wrote in my speech. So we are a volunteer board made up of transit riders like us that serves as the public oversight committee over the use of Seattle Transit Measure funds. % of the vote, hoping to expand the largest service tens of thousands of people will rely on every single day. And over the lifetime of the current STM measure, the TAB has received detailed reports and examined closely how every dollar of the STM has been spent. In our estimation, the measure has delivered on these promises to voters. This is a measure that has kept essential services afloat amidst the pandemic and a severe economic downturn. The STM was needed and it delivered. It has made tangible, immediate differences in people's daily lives, but it's not enough just to attempt to preserve service. We need to expand it.
With this in mind, we are thrilled with the mayor's renewal proposal, and we wholeheartedly endorse this proposal, which is focused on the reason the original STM passed with such historic numbers. Simply put, it makes transit in this city better. Better frequency, better reliability, better access, better options. As the oversight board for these funds, our highest priority is ensuring that the money people are putting into this measure aligns with that intent and is put to their benefit. We want to see immediate, meaningful returns. This renewal is an opportunity to deliver that immediate impact. A bus that runs on the weekend when it didn't before, that maintains its frequency after commuting hours, a subsidized ORCA card, putting money back in the pocket of those who need it most and allowing them to get where they need to go. These are the returns that we want to see, and this is the service that Seattleites deserve. These plans that we have, the Seattle Transportation Plan, the Frequent Transit Network, these don't have to be just words, just aspirations or things that never make it off the paper. These are things that we can fulfill. These are things that we can build, and we can do so quickly. We have the opportunity to do so now and build a city that is sustainable and that everyone can afford to navigate. And we believe that this proposal will do that. Thank you so much to the mayor's office and SDOT for proposing it. I'd now like to introduce Paul Neal, the financial secretary of the Amalgamated Transit Union.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I speaking? Yes. Okay, good. ATU Local 587 fully supports the Seattle Transit Measure Renewal proposal, and would like to thank Mayor Wilson for her leadership and bold vision in proposing to double the current funding rate to meet the public's demand for more public service and transit safety. ATU also thanks the people of Seattle and the Seattle City Council for their long, unwavering, and passionate support of public transit. Now more than ever, there is a critical need to expand public transit. The rising price of gas and the continuing population growth in Seattle of almost 1,000 people per month is placing more demands on our public transportation system. This investment is critical to the people of Seattle being able to exercise their right to transportation, whether it be to get to work, school, medical services, the grocery store, or the regional rail network. The increasing density of the city needs a robust public transportation system. This levy will fund the Seattle Streetcar, which is absolutely essential to the functioning of the high-density South Lake Union and First Hill neighborhoods, as well as provide additional trips per year. This funding will also be used to pay for targeted construction projects to reduce transit delays at pinch points and build other improvements around bus stops. ATU urges the Seattle City Council and the people of Seattle to support the renewal and expansion of the Seattle Transit Measure. I'd like to introduce Katy from the Transportation Choices Coalition.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know, June is Ride Transit Month. So happy Ride Transit Month. Yeah. What a perfect way to kick it off. My name is Katy Ricchiuto. I'm the Policy Director for Transportation Choices Coalition. For over 30 years, TCC has been organizing, advocating for, and helping fund transit across Seattle because we believe how a city moves says a lot about its values. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I've moved around the city recently. This past weekend, I took the bus to the light rail to get to the airport. This morning, I took the Rapid Ride G to get to work, but every once in a while, I'll take the Route 2 if it's faster. Maybe I'll take Route 3 or 4 home. And after this, I am taking Rapid Ride E up to an event that TCC is holding on Aurora Avenue. And when I went to a Mariners game a few weeks back, I took the streetcar. If you had told me as a kid I would be standing up transit where I grew up. So I think Seattle's values are pretty clear. We love investing in transit. In 2020, voters passed the Seattle Transit Measure because they wanted more bus service. In 2024, they passed the Transportation Levy to fund better transit stops and safer walks to transit. They've passed funding for light rail more than once. Transportation Choices Coalition has been proud to help lead the campaigns to fund those efforts, and we are here today because Seattle is about to do it again. For a lot of people in this city, transit isn't optional. It's an essential part of daily life. As the mayor said, owning a car in Washington state costs a lot, over $12,000 a year on average. So when we talk about affordability in this city, we have to talk about transportation because I think one of the most progressive things we can do is make it easier to live without a car or with one less car. Every time Seattle voters have been asked whether they want to invest in that, they have said yes. That shows that Seattleites believe reliable transit should be available to everyone. I think the details of the Seattle Transit Measure renewal speak for themselves. It'll fund more bus service at all times of the day, better connections to light rail, and expand fare subsidies for tens of thousands of low-income individuals. This measure will help Seattle residents get to the doctor, to the grocery store, to school, to recreation, and to jobs. Transportation Choices Coalition is excited about this proposal from Mayor Wilson. Thank you for your leadership and commitment to transit on behalf of the riders that this measure will serve. We helped get the last measure passed, and we're excited to help get this one passed too. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our afternoon discussion. Thank you very much.
Questions.
There's kind of a contradiction between affordability and increasing the sales tax. This would double it. Can you speak to why you're proposing such a large sales tax increase, and maybe speak to the question of why there aren't other alternatives?
Yeah, so our transportation benefit district is enabled by state law, and so we're given very specific funding sources, the main one being sales tax. And yeah, I mean, I think we are in a moment where people are having a lot of trouble affording to live in this city. And I think this is really a question of what we choose to do with the investments that we make and the tax revenue that we raise. So when we're investing in public transit, making it possible for people to live car-free or car-light, when we're investing in affordable fares, those are really direct supports that are creating affordability for the people in our communities that need it most. And it's unfortunate that we don't have more progressive options for funding our transit system, but that's something that we can continue to work at the state level.
In addition to that, at what point did you decide to double it?
You mean like what date?
In the process of looking at the renewal, at what point did you guys decide on doubling it?
Well, one thing I think is important to point out is that we're also in a moment where everything is getting more expensive. So when we talk about, even though we are doubling the size of the measure, that's not unfortunately actually getting us doubled transit service. So just to maintain the level of transit service that we have been providing was going to require a larger measure anyway, because the cost of everything is going up all across the board for households, for businesses, for government. And I don't remember the exact point at which kind of we would be maintaining the level of service, but we decided that increasing the size of the measure to be able to actually expand transit service was going to be really important, especially as we are continuing to build out our regional light rail system, right? And we just opened up the Cross Lake Connection and Judkins Park Station. And so really just making sure that we are taking advantage of that connectivity seemed really important in this moment. So we decided to go up to 0.3%, which is kind of what our funding authority is through the Transportation Benefit District.
The county council enacting additional sales tax on top of this that could actually divert dollars from the city of Seattle to other jurisdictions?
So you're talking about the 0.1% countywide sales tax proposal that the King County Council may pass for mostly for roads in unincorporated county, but there's a discussion about some of that revenue going back to cities. Obviously I would like, if some of that money is going back directly to cities, Seattle taxpayers are paying that money, and I would like to see Seattle get our fair share of that money. We have a lot of needs here.
Years ago, when this city tax originated, there was a car tab fee involved. I think it was $40 or $60. How come you're not seeing that, or that nobody was interested in putting that forth this time around?
Yeah, so there is there's a $50 car tab fee that in principle could also be put on the ballot alongside this the sales tax measure. I think we've looked at the way that previous measures have panned out and felt that going in that direction, just to be blunt, would be a lot more controversial in terms of potential. We've had the last couple of Seattle Transportation Benefit District measures have gone through with very little organized opposition. Everyone wants transit. Everyone is like, okay, this is a reasonable way to pay for it. I think we've seen car tab measures rouse more organized opposition, and I think we wanted to stick with something that we were really confident Seattle voters were going to be able to enthusiastically get on board with.
Metro's ridership is 2/3 to 3/4 what it was pre-pandemic, and they reported last year that there were no routes that required more investment to relieve overcrowding, though there were a lot of neighborhoods that were underserved for frequency or time of day. How do you, when there isn't overcrowding and there is a significant amount, over $50 million already collected, how or why is Seattle short on bus service? Right.
Well, I think as you just mentioned, there are many areas that are underserved for frequency and time of day, so we're going to be making our investments strategically to address those issues. And I'll also say that ridership continues to climb back up. So we are looking forward to a future where ridership is surpassing and continuing to grow past pre-pandemic levels. I'm very confident that that is the future that we are moving toward, especially as, again, we are continuing to build out our light rail system and making other investments in transit reliability, like the investments that we're making in transit priority and dedicated bus lanes. So I think we are looking forward to a future where more people are riding transit, especially as our region keeps growing. And I also think it's really important to frame this, this is not just something that we are doing for transit riders, right? As people continue to move to our region, we have to make it possible for more people to get around without a car, because we simply don't have the space to keep adding more cars and more parking to our roads indefinitely. So this is really something that is good for everyone, whether or not you own a car, whether or not you have to drive, right? This is really about giving people those options and making sure that we are using our road space as efficiently as possible to move people to where they need to go.
vision for the future of the Seattle Streetcar. The current two-line system requires, I think, 13.4 million this year in subsidy, which pretty much outweighs a lot of the transit investments that are provided in Metro.
So, we're going to be monitoring I think the First Hill line is performing extremely well. I think the South Lake Union line, has a little bit more challenges in terms of ridership, although there was a big bump in ridership recently, right? So it's trending, I think, in a good direction. So we're going to be monitoring kind of how ridership on that line goes, especially as we're making other, changes to our investments in our transit system. So, we'll just see. I think, obviously, if we had all the money in the world, we'd love to build that Center City connector and just really get our streetcar system connected. But we're going to be kind of monitoring and trying to make sure that we're using these dollars in the most effective way possible.
All right, thanks everybody. If you have any follow-ups, please come find me.
Actually, just one quick question on affordability. You mentioned ORCA. ORCA is yeah. So is there going to be an expansion of ORCA Lift, and will that include an expansion to by income? Because right now it's only for very low income folks.
Okay, so the city doesn't actually run the ORCA Lift program, so that's a Metro program. The specific investment that we're making with these dollars is partnering with the Seattle Housing Authority to basically offer free annual passes to residents in affordable housing buildings. This is a program that the city has been funding, but this is actually represents a very significant expansion of that, not just in the dollars that we are putting into this, but we've also worked with Metro to basically agree to a different model where previously we were actually paying full fare for those rides, but now we're going to be paying at the ORCA Lift rate, which is $1 ride. So the money that we are using on this program is actually going to go a lot further and be able to serve a lot more people than it was previously. So I don't know if do you have the numbers for how many people this is going to serve now versus when it did before?
Up to 22,000.
And before, how many were? So we're going from 10,000 to 22,000 without doubling the money, basically. So that's that, and I think this is just a really, really exciting thing. I'll just say, through my previous organizing with the Transit Riders Union, right, and also my personal experience, the difference between having that unlimited pass in your pocket versus having to think about where you're going to come up with the money every time you ride transit is just, it just represents freedom through mobility. And so to be able to offer that to 22,000 people in our community is really remarkable.